And I know he's from Pennsylvania, so maybe he's good there for the long term. And I'm not sure Penn State can do better than James Franklin, which is another point there. So
Yeah.
we'll see. The last one here. Tennessee, have you heard of them?
Who?
Have you heard of the Vols?
No, is this a women's basketball? What are we talking about?
Hey, a lot of success there, too. Tennessee, though, has not made the college football playoff yet. They go into this year. New quarterback. They were obviously number one in the country for a little bit last year. They had the spot kind of sealed up if they take care of business against South Carolina on the road, and obviously that did not go the way any Tennessee fan had hoped. I'm curious to see if those orange helmets ever make their way back into the Tennessee locker room. My gut tells me we won't see those bad boys around for a long time, but the case for Tennessee making it this year, I think I would still bet against it. I still think in my heart of hearts they take a step back. I'm not saying a big step back. I think this feels more like a 9-3, 8-4 team to me with progress on defense. Like, we're going to see what happens with Joshua Josephs, James Pierce on the edge. Roman Harrison is still probably going to start at that Leo spot. They need a big year from Tyler Barron on the opposite side. Lot of infusion of talent on the defensive line all across the board. Those guys have to pop. Like, you have to have the Tyree West, those guys. Norman Lott, from the transfer from Arizona State. You need Omari Thomas to have another big year as the leader of this defensive line. They need to have big years. They need to burst through. Some of these 4-star kids need to start breaking through. And then some of the 5-stars like the David Hobbs and company who are into the fold, they need to start rotating. Arian Carter, 2 deep linebacker, 4-star linebacker, freshman from Tennessee. He's got to play. Aaron Beasley, Keenan Peely, linebacker transfer from BYU. He's got to be really good out of the gate.
Did you say Keenan Peely?
Nah, Keenan Peely, yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Old dude, already married, I think, on campus. So he's an old soul, but by all accounts, good leader and probably a tackling machine if he's healthy. Then you look at the secondary. Can't possibly be any worse than what they were a year ago. So look, that can't be as bad as it was if you want to make the college football playoff this year and really build off that. Jordan Matthews entered the fold. Gabe Judy Lawley also enters the fold. Another BYU kid. I'm interested to see if he starts. Kamal Haddon, it looks like, is a starter out of spring practice, so we'll see if he carries that into it. The secondary's got to get better, though. I'm not feeling great about the safeties. Jalen McCullough and Wesley Walker and Terry McDonald. Not a lot of upside there. Okay, but not a lot of upside there. Exposable. Danico Slaughter, where does he fit? Is he a safety? Is he a corner? All that to say, I think the defense takes a step forward, and I think they're better in 2023. I don't think the offense is better than what the best of it was last year. I'm still there's still like a floor for Josh Heupel's offense, I think, in the sport. I mean, like, it wasn't easy. People forget, kind of like with Stetson in 2021 and Georgia's offense, where it's like it was pretty off kilter, and it wasn't smooth in 2021 until really the end of the season, where Tennessee really started figuring stuff out with Heupel and what they were trying to do. Like, it was rough. I was in the building for a lot of those early weeks with Joe Milton, and then the early part of Hendon Hooker taking over. I'm curious to see, because Joe Milton obviously did not throw a pick. He has all this upside. He is going to be a fan favorite. National media is going to love this story. He could throw the ball 85 yards. He did it again this week. Standing backflips, all that stuff. They have talent at wide receiver. They should be fine there. I don't see this offense falling out of the top 10 in scoring. However, I don't trust Joe Milton in Tuscaloosa. I don't trust this offensive line in Tuscaloosa. I don't trust this offensive line against Georgia at home. I don't know if I trust this line at Kentucky and what Kentucky's going to look like this year. Like, they're going to kill Virginia in the opener. They're going to take care of the games they're supposed to. But, like, what does that offensive line look like against A&M at home? A&M's going to have dudes on the defensive line coming into Neyland. Like, what if John Campbell, the transfer left tackle, can't hold up? What if the right tackle spot is just a disaster with Gerald Mincey and J.J. Crawford? Left guard's still very much up in the air. Like, is it Ollie Lane? I don't know. I think the offensive line is going to be worse. Losing Darnell Wright is going to really hurt this team, I think, this year. And the thing about Hendon Hooker, too, not only was he just an unbelievable leader, person, player, all that, he moved around in the pocket. He knew when to take off and go get the first down when the first read wasn't there. Things broke down. He took care of business. Joe Milton in the bowl game, if you go back, a lot of 3-and-outs, took a lot of bad sacks. So he had the big plays to scroll down the field, but it wasn't clean. It wasn't always just humming like it was with Hooker all year long. I am very concerned with this offense and what Joe Milton looks like if the offensive line takes a big step back. He takes the bad sacks. He is reluctant to take off. He's more of a statue guy. I don't think that's a recipe for a college football playoff year. So I don't think they're going to end the drought this year. Now in 2024, 12-team playoff, Nico with a full-year red shirt, a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. They'll be right there in the blue chip ratio. I could see it. Like, you could easily talk me into them being a playoff team next year. This year,
well, 12-team, the whole meaning of a playoff team kind of changes.
I still think it's not going to be
point.
a cakewalk for an SEC to get 3 teams in.
Of course, but a playoff contender, when you're saying I think they could finish top 12 or finish top 4, this is completely different at that point.
That's fair. I would just say that, like, even top 4 next year would not surprise me. Like, if Nico is as good as he possibly can be, and with the talent they have now, both sides of the ball and how they've recruited, I could see them being a top 4 team, even a preseason top 4 team going into 2024. I don't see it this year. And that's me. If it is the case, that means the offensive line was fine. And that means the defense took a significant step forward. And that means Joe Milton is going top 5 in the NFL draft. All those things have to happen for Tennessee to win that playoff draft. Joe Milton has to have a Joe Burrow breakout year. This 1-year blip where he finally puts it all together, impossible to sack, takes off way more, is so much more trustworthy in big games, in close games, which we haven't seen yet, not running out of bounds on 4th down with the game on the line against a big team like Ole Miss at home. Can't do that against A&M at home on prime time, let's hope. I just need to see it, and maybe that happens. Joe Milton has the talent for that to happen, but that's just not where I'm at. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see it this year, and I'm trust me, I'm not here to rain on the Tennessee Volunteer Parade, but have Tennessee fans considered the possibility that the number 1 ranking in November of 2022 is as good as it ever gets? Like, you look at Dan Mullen, you look at Mississippi State, 2014. We love to talk about what they did in 2014. It's what did Mississippi State ever do after that? It's they had some 9-4 seasons. They had some years where they were good, finished ranked. South Florida, they were ranked number 2 that one year. Nothing ever amounted to anything for South Florida. They ended up 8-5 the next year, or whatever they were. It's so there's this notion that it's just that progress is linear, It's they went, what did they go, 7-6 in 2021, followed up with 11-2. 11-2 is that what Tennessee did last year? That it's now they're going to be in the playoff, and it's hold on now. The stars may have aligned for the 11-2, and Tennessee, I think, does take a step back. I think the schedule plays out pretty solid for them. Other than at Florida early, it's that's in terms of having to go into a hostile environment early in the year. Other than the fact that Tennessee never wins at Florida in the last 15 years, just that's extra, that's extra stuff that we talk about as college football fans, but that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter that what Florida was doing in 2013 and 2015 and 2009 when they were playing Florida. That doesn't really affect this, or when they were playing Tennessee, that doesn't affect this game. But psychologically, Tennessee fans feel it, and they feel an extra pressure when playing in the swamp. But if they can get over that, I feel that just gives them so much confidence, I think, kind of getting that swamp win off their back. So if they beat Florida, they're going to start 4-0. And then obviously having A&M and Alabama right there back-to-back is just super tough. But if you can get through that, all of that with 1 or 2 losses, and then you're set up the 11th game of the season, most likely with Georgia, and to actually have a chance to a win over Georgia could could win the East. Like that's what really all you want as a Tennessee fan is for that December or November 18th game to against Georgia to be for the SEC East. Like if that's what the season happens in the season, it's basically a success.
I would agree. I think you're right about Florida. I think that will tell me everything I need to know about where the season's going. Like Florida, you have to get over it. Like it's one thing to win at home, but it's another thing to go into the swamp where they haven't won in forever. And South Carolina at home, I think they'll be fine. A&M at home, I still think they'll be fine. On the road at Florida, on the road at Bama, you're asking a lot to beat Bama back-to-back years, beat Saban back-to-back years. And then if you don't beat Saban at Alabama, then you have to beat Georgia at home.
With Hendon Hooker back and like no question marks on the offense, it's tough to navigate this schedule and like going at and beating Saban back-to-back. With the added variable of like Joe Milton could be great and he could be awful. Like it's like we really don't even know what the ceiling or the floor is for Joe Milton at this point. So it could be Nico, like it could be a disastrous year where you lose 4 or 5 games, but it could also be a year where you're playing for the SEC championship. So I think Tennessee's got a lot of variables, but I mean, I look at what Georgia is probably going to be, and that's going to be a tough one to get over. So if you got 2 losses going into that game versus Georgia, and Georgia's undefeated, and it's like that result doesn't really matter, it's like that'll be a little discouraging as a Tennessee fan. But if you go 9-3, 10-3 if you win a bowl game, that's really not. If that's the disappointing year in year 3 of Heupel, then you'll take that and move to year 4.
The most Tennessee thing ever would be to lose to Florida, lose to Bama, and then beat Georgia, and none of it mattering. Like to get over the Georgia hump and just have the upset of the century, and then it doesn't matter because of the 2 early losses, and you're not a playoff team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to have that game actually mean something in Knoxville, like that crowd is going to be absolutely insane. So I'm hoping, and Georgia's not a guarantee to be, undefeated at 10-0 either. So it's like Georgia could have a loss on their schedule. We don't know where the loss is going to come. It feels like Tennessee is probably the most likely if you had to pick one on the schedule. But, college football is a tricky sport. So you still got to play the games, and, you never know.
I would say Auburn is more likely. If I had to pick one of like most, just had Auburn, I could see just the game from hell, the A&M Bama type game from 2 years ago. Like it would, like something like that, where Auburn will, like they've put in a bunch of work in the portal. Like they are going to have a bunch of talent everywhere. And if Peyton Thorne's good, I mean, that game's always has the potential in Jordan Hare to get a little frisky for the Dogs. Like I love Tennessee. I hope that they are right there with the Dogs come late November. But like, I don't know who's going to be under center by that point. I don't know what Tennessee looks like at that point. Auburn early on, Georgia could overlook them based on what happened last year. Hugh Freeze obviously has a lot of success. Wasn't Kirby the DC at Alabama when he beat them with Ole Miss?
Yeah, that would have been 14 and 15. I think they beat them back to back, right? Yeah, that would have been Kirby at Bama.
It wouldn't shock me. Like, I don't think they're going to do it. But, like, if I had to say between the two, who I would say is more likely, especially based on the time they're playing, I'm like, I could see it. I think Auburn, to me, feels more frisky than...
That's fair. Tennessee might be a lot more established by Game 11, but there's also a chance that Georgia is a lot more established by Game 11 as well. So...